Right then, it's match number 65, and we have, of course, Mumbai taking on Hyderabad in this one. Many would say it's an inconsequential clash, but you can certainly never, ever doubt the drama in the Indian T20 League. Yup, in this match preview on cricket.com, we have Nicholas Verity Knight. In other names, Nick Knight, of course, joining us right now. Nick, I don't think anyone's introduced like that before.
No, Nicholas Verity Knight. You're absolutely correct, and on two counts, really. I don't think it's ever happened before, and you're absolutely correct with the name. Yes, there you go.
All right, I mean, we have to talk about Hyderabad here first because Mumbai, of course, long gone, done and dusted. Where have they kind of blown the season? Because at one point in time, they were sitting pretty at the top of the table, I think, after the 7 games. And then from there, it's just been bizarre, to say the least.
It has. I mean, when you actually look at the way the competition has run for them, I did their first game, actually, and I felt, I'll be honest with you, I think it was against Rajasthan Royals, and I felt then, I know it's easy to judge on one game, but you felt then it might be a long tournament for them. Then I think they lost their next one. Then they won the next 5. So as you rightly say, you know, they've sort of got something going. 5 wins in a row, and I think they've lost 5 in a row. So it's been sort of a topsy-turvy tournament for them. My gut feeling is, where's it gone wrong? On a number of accounts, really. One, not enough power at the top of the order, and that's been a problem for them. We'll perhaps touch on Kane Williamson a little bit later, but he's a touch player who's been out of touch. I think that's the best way I can put it. It's not all about power, T20 cricket. There are different ways of having success as a batter, and his way is a class player, one of the world's finest. But when he's a bit out of touch, he doesn't really have that sort of muscular approach which can get him out of that. So yes, it's no, they've not got out the power plays very quickly. Abhishek's played his part. And then, of course, they've relied heavily on Markram and Pooran, but that's not always the problem, really. The problem has also been a bit with the ball. I said right from the outset, actually, the one concern I have, even when they're winning all those games, Sunrisers, was the absence of a mystery spinner. And I think in this format of the game, a mystery spinner is absolutely crucial. So I think that's cost them as well. I mean, he's won the toss, Kane, on a number of occasions. And if they're chasing 150, 160, they're okay most of the time. When it gets up above that, that's when it exposes the batting lineup a little bit.
Yeah, we saw that the last game where it was almost restricting KKR to 150 until the last over, which was a tactical blunder to give it to Washington Sundar, which cost them in the end, and they lost pretty heavily. Now, you mentioned the various accounts where they've kind of been culpable, but we'll talk about Kane Williamson because a strike rate of 92 really doesn't do him good. Why is that? I mean, have teams sussed him out? His just, like you said, a touch player being out of touch?
I think it's as simple as that. I think it's a touch player out of touch. I also think it's been a little tricky, and I speak here on behalf of all the top order players, perhaps with a bit of sympathy and understanding. The conditions, certainly when I was out there was a lot of grass on the pitch. We talked a lot about the conditions, and it has been a little bit challenging. And actually, I think the most smarter players have just given themselves a chance to get through that difficult period in the power play. So I think the first month or so of the tournament, it wasn't so much about big muscular players with big heavy bats whacking 4s and 6s. It was kind of just working your way through, manoeuvring your way through those early overs. And Kane Williamson tried to do that. But then you have to kick on. And because he's been out of form, out of touch, he hasn't been able to do that. And I would like to make that point again. I always get slightly irked when I hear T20 cricket, you have to be sort of full of muscles and you have to be able to whack it out of the park. There are other ways of dissecting it. There are other ways of having success. And Kane Williamson would be one of those. Joe Root at his very best would be another, where it's not all about those 4s and 6s. It's about rotation of strike. It's about finding the gaps. It's about hitting 4s and the occasional 6. And your strike rate can still be up there. The problem is, if you are out of touch a little bit, it's almost, well, you don't really have plan B. And plan B is, I'll give it a welly, and I've got the power to clear the ropes. It's not quite happened for him.
Many people on Twitter, pundits alike, of course, questioning Kane Williamson's presence in this format. But look, you just got to look back at that 2018 season where I think he mustered over 700 runs. So I think it's just been a bad year for him. Another person who's suffering a similar sort of year in terms of runs is Mumbai skipper Rohit Sharma. Now, Why has he suffered the worst IPL season in his career? Is there, again, something where people have felt that he's been susceptible to? Is it just luck? Is it a combination of both these things?
I don't think it's susceptible to too much. I mean, you're looking at a player that's been around for a long time, playing in these conditions for a long time, against the best bowlers in the world for a long time. Now, I understand that there are times in the game you can't just stand still and say, well, this is my game, I've had success. And I don't think he's doing that for one moment. You constantly have to try and evolve as the game evolves. I get all that. And I'm not for one moment saying that he's fine as he is. But I think sometimes we have such high expectations. We have, he himself will have those high expectations. I think as well, what has perhaps exaggerated that problem a little bit is the fact that the top order itself hasn't really fired on a consistent basis. Ishan Kishan's had a similar problem. He started well, he's had runs in spits and spots, but not consistently throughout. And of course, when both players at the top of the order are having a problem, it kind of highlights the problem even more. And then, of course, it's really Tilak Varma and a bit of Brevis and a bit of this and a bit of that. But really, the batting unit hasn't fired at all. And then, of course, when the batting unit doesn't fire, what happens to your senior and your best player? He starts to feel even more pressure because he realizes the impact of his runs are even more crucial because nobody else is really making those big contributions at the top. So I think it's a combination really of him being out of touch, a bit out of form, expectation. I mean, the reality for me when I saw that Mumbai side at the start of the tournament was senior players have to help this side massively, because I worried a little bit about the bowling unit and I worried a little bit about how things might go in the middle. And you look at that top order and they spent a lot of money on Ishan Kishan and of course they've got the quality of Rohit. You just felt that had to be something that was firing, and it's just not done that throughout the tournament. So let's not worry about Rohit Sharma. I personally have no worry at all that suddenly he's now not going to become the player that he was. He'll be fine. He'll work things out and get back to his very best very shortly. You just have these form dips from time to time, and unfortunately it has coincided with a number of other players.
Let's talk about another Mumbai player in the form of Tilak Varma, because I'll give you a fun fact. If there's any player this season who scored the most runs against spin, it's the Mumbai man, Tilak Varma, which is a shocking stat, a surprising stat, but pleasantly surprising for Mumbai Indian fans. So what has made him have a real breakthrough season, if I can use that word, because he's been a real find, hasn't he?
He has indeed. And again, you look at a number of factors here with Tilak Varma. You look at the way he's played, the way he sets up, the way he scores against spin, all these encouraging signs. But for me, having watched him in this year's IPL, the most encouraging sign is the fact that this bit is in good order. Temperament, character, fight, determination, because those have been tried and tested, because often he's coming in with the team in trouble. So when you're looking at a young player and you're looking at how he's going to cope in the future and what his future might hold, one of the most important things you look at, for me anyway, when I look at a player, I look at how's he played in any given situation. It is so much more straightforward if you're coming in at 120 for 2, 130 for 3 with senior players at one end, and your job is just either get him on strike or have a dip yourself. It's pretty simple. The game situation determines how you play. What he's come in at, often the game situation does determine because his team are in trouble, but he's managed to find a way of maneuvering himself and his own performance, helping the team he best possibly can. And it's not been enough on many occasions, but it's not about one player. But what he's done is stick his head above the parapet and said, okay, with the team in trouble, this is what I can do, by the way. And I think it says immeasurably about what's going on here and how he can cope with a very difficult situation. So then you pass it forward again and think international cricket. That's a massive tick, because international cricket is so much about pressure, how you can find your way through difficult situations. And, that shows a really good sign. If I was a selector, I'd be looking at something like that. You obviously look at the back lift and the feet and the head and the hands and how you set up and how you play the quicks and how you play the spin. I get all that. But this is the bit that really makes you successful. And I think that's a big tick for him.
Yeah, the mental makeup is what they often use in the com box, and Nick is just reiterating that. Right, let's talk about changes then from a Mumbai perspective, because SRH have been chopping and changing, so we understand that. Mumbai, of course, the last time when they beat Chennai in that low-scoring affair, they had Meredith, Sams, Tim David, and the new boy in Tristan Stubbs. Do you think there's a chance that Brevis could play this one, or bring back Kieran Pollard? How do you kind of chop and change if you were Mumbai?
Yeah, I mean, you've spoken to me on many occasions about selection. I'm a consistency man. I love once. I don't like too much chopping and changing. I get that inevitably, if your team is losing and you're trying to find combinations, I get in the early part of the tournament you swap and change a little bit. I would still leave Pollard out. I would continue to play Tim David. I love Tim David's way of playing. I think he's going to be a superstar of the game, this format of the game. I think Brevis too is a player that I would try and give as much opportunity to, because I think too that he's going to be a superstar of the game. So creating opportunities for these guys to thrive, I think, is really important. That on the batting front. On the bowling front, I like Meredith. I think he adds a bit more pace. I think a bounce, and I think he adds a bit more energy to the bowling unit. So I would stick with Meredith. Daniel Sams has done well, having done pretty iffishly in the first few games that he played. So he's a good acquisition. You know, when you look at Mumbai, I say the same actually as I do with Sunrisers. I'm looking at Shoki's done well when he's come in to a degree, but I'm looking at mystery spin. I think that's going to complement that attack. When you bring back Jofra Archer and you got Bumrah and you got perhaps some of those other guys I've just mentioned, you've got a pretty good attack there, but I still think you need that variety of a mystery spinner. So that might be something they need to look at. I wouldn't make too many changes.
Okay, having said that, predictions then, blue or orange in this one, even though it's a dead rubber, they're dubbing it here back home. Would you fancy the 5-time winners to conjure something up?
Yeah, I'm going to go with them. I think both sides lost to KKR last game, something like that. As you say, not a huge amount on the game, but I just feel that Mumbai, if they play at their very best or somewhere near their very best, I think they'll be too strong for Sunrisers. But Sunrisers have just lost their way a little bit in the last 5 games. Again, I've made mention about Jansen. I'm pleased that he's back. I'm pleased that he's back playing. If he has a good day, maybe. But I just feel that their attack is a bit more varied. And if their batting lineup does get half a chance to fire and Tim David has a day out, I'm going Mumbai.
Okay, I'm going super over because we haven't seen that so far. So hopefully, cricket's the winner and it's not just a boring, dull affair. But you can catch Nick Knight and me having this chat post-match, of course. So watch us then. Until then, it's a goodbye from us, and there's plenty to play for, which is pride being the most important thing.